Welcome back to the Great British Crochet Off, where every single week I crochet something inspired by that week's episode of the Great British Bake Off, and this was back to school week. Insert clip here of Billy Madison saying back to school to show my dad I'm not a fool. As always, while we'll not be discussing who left or who got Star Baker, I will be discussing these specific challenges. So if you've not yet watched this week's episode, you can hit this little bookmark button down here and save this till after you've watched this week's episode. Now let's get into the back to school challenges. As an American, these were really fun because these are not usual like American school treats and things like that. For their signature, they had to do flapjacks, which over here, I guess maybe we'd call it a granola bar, maybe like a baked oatmeal bar. It was basically like an oaty bar. I know by standard, flapjacks are pretty basic and simple. They're just like an oaty sweetened with like golden syrup kind of bar. But the bakers obviously for their signature had to elevate them. They put like ganache and fruit and pears poached in wine and all sorts of like fun things on them. As an oatmeal lover, I could get down on pretty much all of these. For the technical, they had to do school cake, which for an American, that's like a yellow sheet cake, and they had a thin layer of icing on it, and then they had to make their own sprinkles for it and serve it alongside a jug of custard. I think this sounds delicious. I can imagine trying to serve this to American school children and having them stare at you like you were a little bit crazy. Like this would be a weird thing to serve to American school children in school. And I wonder to my UK watchers, like, is this something that's still served in school, or is this like an old school thing that they don't really do anymore? Last we had our showstopper, and they had to make a school feet display, F-E-T-E, feet. There's no way I'm getting around that word politely, so we're gonna say school festival. It was basically like, you know how I don't think it's as common here in America. I've gone to one school, St. Symphosa, that had like a school festival, though really it was like a church festival. But like they have like bake sales and rides and games, and all sorts of things like that. This was probably the earliest I think that they've had to do like a serious batch baking showstopper. They had to do like a centerpiece showstopper, like a cake or something like that. But then they also had to do 3 different things showing 3 different kinds of like baking, confectionery, whatever. This was like a pretty complicated one for week 4. I was very surprised by it. But all that being said, this week I was inspired by ducks. It had to be ducks, all the ducks. So when the bakers were making their like school festival displays, so many of them 4 of them, I believe, chose to highlight the like, they called it a hook-a-duck game. I know it more as like you net the duck and on the bottom there's like a little symbol that tells you what you won. That's always my favorite thing at the carnival when I was a kid. I love to take the net, scoop up a little duck, see what silly, stupid prize that I won. So this is not just a weird duck bag, because in Yarn, in the Great British Crochet Off, it's never just a weird duck bag. This is the mama duck. And if I can untie her, if I didn't make this too tight of a knot, inside of her, she turns into a paddling pool, and inside is my own little duck game. So there's 10 little miniature ducks. And when I was thinking about that hook-a-duck game, I was thinking about kids like matching games where they have, for instance, like a bunch of cards that they lay down and they'll each have a symbol on them. So maybe like they'll have like a saxophone on one and you have to find the other card that has a saxophone, like remember where it was. So I made a little memory game using these ducks. So each one of them has colored hearts on the bottom, and you've got to do the memory game where you like pick it up and you're like, okay, green duck's here. Where's the other green duck? Here. Double green ducks. This is a match. I win. I'm very happy with myself for combining both a duck theme thing and also like a learning thing for back to school. My girls they have been begging me to film this episode so that they could have this duck game because they just want to play with the little ducks. And that's actually a thing I love about this toy. Not only is it like a learning game, but it can also like grow with kids. So when they're a little one, they can just like play with cute ducks, because what baby and toddler doesn't love just like a cute little duck? But then as they get older, they can play the matching game. And as they get even older, they can play with like the mama duck and her babies and kind of role play out those roles. So I'm very, very pleased with this whole setup. I will say, after crocheting 11 ducks this week, I probably don't need to crochet another duck for some time. This would be a really great gift if you like to like crochet gifts for kids. And actually, if you're interested in making something similar, I'll have a couple of videos out on Patterns this week. So I'll have my usual Great British Crochet Off technical version where I chat through the behind the scenes. And then I'm gonna have a whole separate tutorial for the little ducks, just because otherwise it was going to turn into like a 20-minute video, and no one, as I know, is going to be watching that. So look for the video featuring the little ducks. These would also make really cute like keychains or just individual little toys. I hope you guys enjoyed back to school week. Next week is chocolate week, which, as we all know, always ends up being the hottest week in the UK, and it always ends up being just the most stressful event. So good luck to the bakers. Luckily, yarn doesn't melt, and I'll see you guys for the next one.